Konnichiwa minasan. Watashi wa Dan desu.
私はHisame です。
Welcome to Puroresu Nihongo. Learn Japanese with fun pro wrestling focused lessons. For today's lesson, we are going to be learning how to introduce yourself and being polite at shows. We're going to be going over probably your first basic vocabulary and introductory phrases, and also discuss the proper way to behave at wrestling shows. If you go to a wrestling show in Japan, it's a really great place to meet new friends. And sometimes you might also meet and see pro wrestlers at these shows. So it's important to know how to act and important to know what to say while you go to attend these shows. So in the first part here of this episode, we're going to be going over a few phrases here. So our first phrase is Watashi no name wa Dan desu. You can also say this, Watashi no name wa, your name, desu.
So the phrase "watashi no name wa," and then your name desu, basically is my name is or I am. So watashi means me. If it's got the no after it, this basically means my. Name is obviously name. Wa or ha, it's normally wa, but it can be both. Is a topic marker, and basically means that everything that goes before it is basically what you are talking about, what you want to talk about, and the most important part is when you finish up is des. But we'll get to the difference between des and desu ka later. Des is basically means this.
So another way that you can say this phrase, which is Watashi no name wa, your name desu. The other way to say this is Watashi wa Dan, or your name desu.
And again, you can also shorten it, and you can just say, say for example, your name is, Jim, Carol, Claire, whatever. You can just say your name and just put after it des. If you don't feel comfortable with the rest of it, but just remember, you can use des after your name. It's casual, but it's absolutely fine.
So our next phrase here is Hajimemashite.
Hajimemashite basically means, pleased to meet you. It's something that you would say to somebody that you're meeting at the first time. You wouldn't say it to somebody that you'd already met before, like a friend of yours or anything like that. So what you would say is Hajimemashite, watashi no name wa Hisame desu. And again, if you wanted just to be casual, just put desu at the end after your name, or just say watashi wa, insert your name and say desu. But hajimemashite always will come before that, because you're saying nice to meet you, I am, then obviously your name.
So basically the way that Hisame just described is the proper sentence structure for using Hajimemashite. So our next phrase is Oname wa nan desu ka?
Oname wa nan desu ka is a polite way of saying, may I know your name? Please let me know what your name is. So it's a nice way to greet people. Whenever you see the O, the hiragana for O, which comes before that, it's honorific, which basically says, which is basically a form of very polite speech. Another, you can shorten it to another one if you don't feel comfortable using the O, but really it is absolutely fine whichever form that you choose to use. We will be doing the casual one next.
So for the casual one, you can also say Oname wa nan desu ka as Anata no name wa desu ka?
Anata no name wa desu ka is basically saying what's your name, and your name is. It's not rude. It's more casual. I once used it at an expo when somebody asked my name, but obviously it's fine to use, and I think the fact that you'd be able to use Japanese even just a little bit is quite something to start with.
So those two phrases again are Oname wa nan desu ka and Anata no name wa desu ka. So now that we have those two down, This next phrase you are probably familiar with. It is arigatou gozaimashita.
Arigato gozaimashita is a very polite way of saying thank you very much, thank you for doing this for me. And it's a nice way and a very polite way to thank somebody for a favour. You can also, shorten it to just, arigato gozaimasu, or just arigato. But either is fine. It's just, if you wanted to be just, very polite, you could say arigato gozaimashita.
So just keep in mind it's arigatou gozaimashita.
Yes.
And you can also shorten it to arigatou gozaimasu.
Yes, yeah.
So our final phrase is dozo yoroshiku onegashimasu.
Dozo yoroshiku onegaishimasu basically means, pleased to meet you. It's what you would say when you shake someone's hand and you bow, which is an additional way that Westerners do greet each other. Dozo, it's the Yoroshiku word, we'll get to that later, because it can have different meanings, but in this case, dozo yoroshiku onegaishimasu, pleased to meet you.
So that should wrap up all of our phrases. Now we are going to go on to the keywords for this lesson. Our first keyword is watashi.
Watashi is I. Watashi no is basically, is my, or it's more mine because you've got the no bit off, but we'll discuss that another time. So watashi is basically I. Watashi no is my because it indicates a possessive, something that you own, whether it's physical or non-physical, whether it be a pen or whether it just be your name.
Our next keyword is desu.
Desu means this. And it always comes at an end of a sentence. You would never, ever start a sentence with des. It always comes at the end. But we'll get to the differences between des and desu ka and when to use them in just a moment.
Next is hwa, also pronounced as ha.
Wa or ha is a topic marker, and it indicates what the sentence is about. There are many different topic markers in Japanese, ga, ka, ni, but we won't worry about them for now. It's just that for ha, that's a topic marker, and that is what you would use for for the moment when you are introducing yourself. Don't worry about the other ones.
Next up is Hajimemashite.
Hajimemashite is basically, nice to meet you. It's it's the best way to describe it.
Next up is anata.
Anata is you. You might sometimes hear this if you take for example, if you are out to dinner with a husband and wife, and she perhaps addresses her husband as anata. It's not as if she's saying, "Hey, you," and she's clicking her fingers at him because he's henpecked or anything. It can be used as a term of endearment, darling, sweetheart. But for you, for the tourist, in this case, anata would mean you. Never ever use it to get somebody's attention. You would never ever say to somebody anata, and just wave at them from because you wanted something, whether you're in a cafe or something. Always for the tourist, use it in a sentence. Never use it in just as a single word.
Next word is name.
Name, it's very simple. It sounds very like the English word. It's name.
The next word is desu ka.
Desu ka and des. Now we have to remember the differences between here because they mean two different things. Des is basically this. Desu ka, there is no equivalent in English except for perhaps I always call it a spoken question mark. In English, we would say, where's my book? Where are my shoes? Where is the post office? Etc. etc. In Japanese, desu ka fills that function. Desu ka is always used as a question or as an interrogative. It basically is what it is. There's no equivalent. It is a spoken question mark.
The next word is yoroshiku.
Yoroshiku is used for many different things. Perhaps you'll be what's the word I'm looking for? In this situation, Yoroshiku would be used as Doru Yoroshiku Onegaishimasu. I don't think you need to use it in this kind of worry about its use in this kind of situation, other than anything other than that. It can be used obviously as a word on its own with its own meaning, but this meaning is hard to translate into what it into what it means. So for this one, for now, it's just used in a sentence. Pleased to meet you.
And our final word is onegashimasu.
Onegashimasu is a very polite way of asking for things. It's like saying, please could you pass me that book if it's not too much trouble? Please, I was wondering if perhaps I could have this sandwich. It's mainly something I guess that you would use if you were ordering something, but it's also used when you're asking a favor. But anyway, it's a very very polite word. I guess you could also use it if you were at the merchandise stand, but it's more of a word I think that you would probably use if you were asking for a sandwich or a water or something like that, again, which you would be purchasing from the venue.
So that will wrap up our keywords. Now we are going to demonstrate how these words and phrases can be linked together in a brief conversation. Hajimemashite. Watashi no name wa Dan desu. O name wa nan desu ka?
Hajimemashite. Watashi wa Hisame desu. Dosu yoroshiku onegaishimasu. And you could also add to that, if you wanted to be, extra polite and, interested in somebody, you could add to it, O genki desu ka? Which basically means, how are you? How's your health? In which case, if you are asked this question, you would reply, Hi, genki desu. And you basically say, yes, I am well.
So pretty much you got an extra phrase to remember here, which is O genki desu ka, which virtually just means, how are you, in a sense. If you want to reply saying that I'm fine, you can say, Hi, genki desu, as Hisame has stated right here. So hopefully you kept up with this conversation. And one thing here that you might have trouble with is just knowing the difference between des and desu ka. But you have to remember in this lesson that ka is basically the particle to ask a question. And it's a very common mistake that you might say des and forget to add in ka at the end of it. And trust me, it's a very common mistake that I make as well with my friends that are Japanese, as well as also with my fiance. And it's many times they look at me and think, oh, are you making a statement, or are you kind of just asking me a question? So it's very important to remember to have the ka at the end of the sentence. So hopefully you can take that away. So now hopefully you have a understanding now of how to introduce yourself in Japanese. Now, if you were to ever go to a pro wrestling show, there are specific manners that you should follow while you attend these shows. So Hisame here is going to explain to you the proper way that you should address wrestlers or meet wrestlers at shows.
The first rule of thumb is that whenever you meet anybody in Japan, you always address them by their surname, unless, of course, you know them extremely well, and you add on san. San means it's a term of address, and it can mean Mr., Mrs., Miss, master, but you always put san at the end of their surname. If you were addressing a wrestler, you would address him by his surname, and you would address him by san. You would never, ever, unless you knew them very well, address them by their real name. If the wrestler only uses one name as their stage name, you address him as that, and you put san after it. It doesn't matter whether you're addressing a male wrestler or whether you're addressing a female wrestler, you always put san after their name. The other points of etiquette I would like to just briefly touch on is when you actually go to the venue, you actually realise the differences between watching wrestling in Japan and watching it in the Western world. I know in the West that there is this tradition that people come to the arenas and they will heckle the wrestlers. In Japan, people do call things out, but there is none of this interchange between people yelling, you suck, blah, 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 anything like that. So it's really up to you as to how you want to behave, whether or not you want to actually enjoy the show, join in with the Japanese fans, when they clap a spot, when they, when they do a chant on entry, when they bang their feet, or whether or not you want to act as if you and your friends are in a zoo and scream abuse. It's completely up to you, but just remember, it's the difference between, enjoying something and ruining it for both yourself and everybody else. When it comes to actually meeting the wrestlers, there is a bit of etiquette here as well. First of all, I know that a lot of people like to come away with autographs and photographs. The best time to get an autograph would be either if you bought merchandise at the beginning of the show, or after the show, if you can get them to sign something and post photographs then. They'll be more than happy to do it. If you ever see them out and about in public, resist the urge to take a photograph, because photographing somebody without their permission is considered to be extremely rude. So by all means, if you feel brave enough, approach them, ask them. A fan approached Kenoa the other day after the match signing press conference, and he was carrying he was wearing a suit and carrying a white paper and carrying a white plastic bag, and they still got a picture taken with him. So by all means, ask. A lot of them do understand more English than they let on, but obviously, but if you do want a picture, as I've said, ask. The worst they can say is no, and it's better than the alternative of being thought very rude.
So, understanding the cultural differences and the way how to act when you go to Japan or just meeting Japanese wrestlers, wherever they might be, is just really important, because it could really affect their attitude towards not just you, but also the people of the nation that you come from. So the goal of this podcast is not just to teach you Japanese, or at least as much Japanese as you really want to learn, but also so that you understand, the proper ways how to interact with Japanese wrestlers, as well as also the proper ways to address them in the long run. So then you will wind up being able to not offend anybody, and also just know their culture and in a sense as well. So we hope that you enjoyed your first lesson here with Puroresu Nihongo, and we hope to see you again on the next lesson.